Hey guys, VideoJames, and today I'm going to be trying to do a review of Transformers The Last Night. It's probably just going to be me ranting on about a bunch of stuff from the movie that I thought wasn't good or was good or whatever. And this is probably going to end up being more of a rant than a review, like I said, because they pulled another Age of Extinction with The Last Night. I'm going to have to say that right off the bat, that Age of Extinction and The Last Night are kind of tying each other right now in the race for worst movies, in my opinion. And it kind of seems like they just keep getting worse and worse as they go on. Like I said before, they keep getting worse the more Transformers movies there are. Like, 1, 2, and 3 were probably the best out of the series. And then after that, it kind of just cut off. And I don't know why 2 gets so much hate, but I still think it was one of the better movies. Because 1 and 2 kind of set the series into a good position. That 1 and 2 kind of put it into that place where it was a fan film, that everybody loved it. And then 3 came out, and it started to shift the opinion a little bit. It was like, okay, some people didn't agree with this, or some people thought this was a little weird, but it was still a really good movie. And then 4 and 5 kind of just set the downturn on an all-time high. Oh, why can't I talk today? But anyway, we're going to move on to The Last Night, and I actually had to write down what I was going to say, because there was like 15 things I had said. And I went and watched the movie last night. I'm going to say this right now. I went and watched it last night. I watched The Last Night last night. That's kind of ironic. But I went out and I watched the movie last night with my grandma, my grandpa, and my cousin. So I wasn't really sure I was going to retain all of my information for the review from last night today, or for today, especially considering I got home at like 11 after the movie, because I went to the 7:30 showing at Great Escape. But I'm going to start out with the good things about the movie. I'm going to try, because there were very few good things about the movie, I can say. So, first thing I want to say is that there were a lot more Transformers on screen than there were in Age of Extinction. That Age of Extinction had a lot more human elements than it actually did Transformers, and The Last Night kind of upped that a little bit, that they got more Transformers on screen at all times. They've got more close-up time with Transformers. They've got more actual details on the Transformers, like we saw. We get more transformation sequences. We got more actual action sequences from the Transformers where they're actually participating and not just in an all-out gunshot fight. And then the next thing is, there was a nice balance of the old and new soundtrack. The Last Night seemed to be kind of bringing a new soundtrack in with the old one and kind of mashing it all up together. And you really didn't notice this until the end of the movie or halfway through. That halfway through is where you start to actually hear actual music in the movie. That you actually start to hear stuff that isn't just like random drum beats or random piano keys or something. And like I said, there were a lot more on-screen transformations with this movie. There were a lot more actual us seeing the Transformers transform, which is a good thing, because the movie is literally called Transformers. It is about robots that transform. How can you not have them transform in a movie where it's literally called Transformers? And that was one of my pet peeves about Age of Extinction, too, was there was almost zero on-screen transformations. That the only ones I can remember are the ones where Optimus and the Autobots are all reuniting, and those are the only ones I counted. Because as far as I was concerned, Galvatron and the new wave of Decepticons weren't really transforming as much as they were mass shifting. They were just pushing all their stuff around and reconfiguring it and rejiggering it. But anyway, we did also get a little bit more character development, that we got a bit more than we did in Age of Extinction, but we also did get a lot less than what we needed. That for the character development that we did get, like, we got smoother designs on all the Transformers, we got new models, we got new designs, we got smoother designs, like in Age of Extinction. Drift and Crosshairs and Hound had all, like, kind of meshed up designs, and now they're kind of smoother, they're flatter, they're more believable. But we still see that Optimus does kind of have his old face, which, I mean, is reasonable, because why would he have time to change his face frozen in space? But anyway, moving on to the bad things about Transformers, which there are so many of, I hate to say. But this is just going to focus on the last night, so I'm not going to say an entire hour, which I probably could. But the first 30 minutes of the movie was absolute garbage, and I hate saying that. I hate calling movies garbage unless they absolutely deserve it. So it's like if you go out back behind a really expensive store or a really expensive restaurant and you see a full meal or a full assembled gadget or something, and it's almost complete, good condition, and you're like, that is really nice looking garbage. Why would anyone throw that out? It was kind of like that. I like to think that art is in the eye of beholders, but a lot of times the art kind of takes a turn for the dumpster. And like I said, the first 30 minutes of Transformers last night was all over the place. That it just felt like you were watching the end of the movie and the end of a bunch of separate movies or tie-ins to the old movies, and then it was just shifting to another one. That it was like, okay, here's the middle of Revenge of the Fallen that we should have put in. Now here's a scene from the end of Age of Extinction. It's like, what? Why are you doing this? It's just 4 minutes of random different scenes split up into different pieces. Like, why would you have a 4-minute scene of something and then move on unexplained to something else? It's like, okay, we're gonna have this military conference and then we're just gonna move on to a straight out gunfight in between Autobots. It's like, why are you doing this, Michael Bay? You need to stop, dude. You've gone one movie saying that you weren't gonna come back to, and then you came back, and then you said you're gonna not do another one. Just please let it be true, because this is kind of going down. I'm sorry. This is... With you around, it's kind of getting worse and worse. I'm sorry. I hate to say that. But then, moving on to the next thing, the dialogue was just absolutely terrible for me. I'm sorry. The dialogue just threw me for a loop. It was like listening to a lecture from 3 separate teachers at once. That the dialogue just did not seem believable. There were spots where it just seemed wooden or unnecessary, that the dialogue could have just been taken out or replaced with something else, that a lot of the times the dialogue felt improper, that it didn't really fit, and that it was kind of just jumbled up words mixed together in a hope that they would actually bring together some form of actual storyline. And it didn't. The dialogue just absolutely took a downturn in my worst opinion. That dialogue basically just said, hill, down there. Then the next thing was, this movie was kind of unbelievable. That this movie, a lot of the stuff didn't seem really believable. Like, the one part that was most unbelievable to me was that Quintessa had to literally... Spoilers, I should have said this at the beginning of the video. Spoilers. There was a scene at the beginning where Quintessa had to literally chain Prime up, torture him, and slap on a mind control device to take over him. But then Bumblebee says one word and it's like, oh, he's back to normal. I'm like, how? She had to literally torture him to get him to listen. And that took like 15 hours in space. And then Bumblebee's with him for like 5 seconds, beating him up, and it's like, oh, he's back to normal. Yeah, that makes logical sense. I mean, why? And another thing was that the Merlin parts were really unbelievable as well. That Merlin kind of just set everything to unbelievable level 10. That it didn't seem likely, it didn't seem that that was something that would have happened, that would have actually been a scenario that would have been done in Transformers. And that's another thing too, is I want to say about Merlin, his dialogue was terrible. Like, that little scene needed to be just cut down by half. Because it wasn't until halfway through that scene that Merlin actually started getting to his point. He just started babbling like a drunk, which he was. I honestly think he was a drunk. But, I mean, you still gotta give him some sort of sense. I mean, I know he's a drunk, but it's a movie. At least make the character know it's a movie. I don't know, the dialogue and the believableness of this movie was kinda not where I'd expect it to be. I mean, it is a movie about transforming robots. I know I shouldn't be that much of a douche about it, but this movie was just a lot unbelievable and a lot of bad dialogue. And then the next thing is there was just a complete waste of characters. Like, there was just a bunch of characters that they just threw in. Like, they put another Age of Extinction with the scenes that they just threw in, but they threw in a bunch of random characters. Like, the little girl that we've seen from all those trailers and Squeaks, we literally see her for a collective 12 minutes in the film. Like, the shots with her in them last a collective 12 minutes, and that's it. That's all. And then, the one Transformer, I don't think it was Wreck-Gar, I think it was someone else, but the one Transformer who basically just had a giant junkyard on his back, we saw him for all 5 minutes, and then he's just not in the film anymore. He's just in there for 5 minutes, and then he's just around flying the ship. It's like, why even introduce him then? You're just gonna introduce him for 5 minutes so that he can bring in a new voice box and a bunch of junk, and then just go away. I mean, why? And then they did that with the Decepticons too. That the Decepticons that we saw in the trailers, they brought them around for mugshots for 5 seconds each, and then there was a whole fight scene where those Decepticons lasted all of, again, 12 minutes, except for one of them as well as Megatron. And there was one Decepticon that never even made it out of the mugshots. There was one Decepticon that lasted all 5 seconds in the film. Why even introduce him? If you're gonna have a Transformer out for 5 seconds, there's no point. You shouldn't just put in an unnecessary character and then just be like, oh, we're just gonna skim past the fact that he's not even in the movie. Why? You're not gonna just do that. You can't just put in a character and be like, oh, we're gonna kill it off immediately. That's not what characters are for. Characters are for actually having some impact on the story. That's just, you can't kill off a character 2 seconds after they're introduced. It absolutely is not what you want. And then, there were a lot of unnecessary points where they just shoved stuff in. There were a lot of points where they shoved a lot of things in that could have just been left out. Like, there was a bunch of humor that could have been taken out because there was a point where it didn't belong. There was a bunch of dialogue, like I said, could have been taken out completely. I don't know. There was just a bunch of stuff they could have taken out again. And another thing, too, is that for what they didn't take out, they put a lot in. And not from their own stuff. They put in a lot of stuff from other movies. Like, we see those little drones flying around, basically TIE fighters. We see they made Cogman basically C-3PO, and they even made a reference to him as C-3PO. And they threw in a whole bunch of other stuff from the movie. I can't really remember what it is at this point, because I'm still frustrated about the characters. But they threw in a whole bunch of other stuff from the movie that was basically just a theft of nerdy ideas from other people. It's like, you're stealing now? Really? Don't make me hate Transformers more. You're making it go downhill. Come on. Just stop it. Get some help. I mean, come on. Get some help from Hasbro writing this script. I mean, the Transformers movies are supposed to be a tie-in to Hasbro. So why is Hasbro having, like, zero input other than character design? That's literally almost the only input that Hasbro is having is the character design. That it's just like, okay, we're gonna just put this character in our toy, and then you can just shove it off in the movie, we don't care anymore, blah, 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 blah. It's like, you gotta have connections to Hasbro, Michael Bay. Michael Bay, you need to just take a step back, go talk to Hasbro, have them sort out this movie, sort out whatever the heck you're doing, and put it into an actual Hasbro-based Transformers movie. Because that's basically what the movies are, is advertisements for the toys, and based off of the toy line. Meaning you have to have a major part of Hasbro tie into the actual movie, not just the character design. You gotta have a lot of Hasbro tie-ins to the story, the characters, all that. You gotta have a bunch of stuff from Hasbro involved, instead of just Michael Bay idea factory. And there was another thing where the plot just developed bad. That with the scenes shifting from one point to another every 2 seconds, it was really hard to follow the film. The film was extremely hard to follow with all the shifting scenes, all the shifting camera angles. That made it really hard to follow. Because it was like, okay, I'm looking here, now I'm looking here. I can't follow what's happening. What am I looking at? And then it's like they just shift around to a bunch of random scenes, and it's like, okay, well, put it on something for more than 2 minutes. I mean, come on, I'm not gonna watch something for 2 minutes and just be like, okay, I understand that. It's like, you're giving me something that should take 10 minutes and explaining it to me in 2. That doesn't work. That is not concept explanation. I don't know. And then, another thing, and this kind of ties into the waste of characters, and this isn't the last thing, by the way. I could go on for ages still talking about this movie. Another thing is that they kind of teased the Knight and Dinobot premise. That we saw the Dinobots for all 4 seconds, and we saw baby Dinobots, but we got almost no other tie-ins to them. That we got the one scene in the junkyard, and the one scene where Grimlock just shows up out of nowhere and starts munching on the cars, and it's just like, okay, but how? And where are they in the rest of the film? You telling me they're just gonna leave them at the junkyard instead of bringing them on the ship? I mean, come on, that's another point where logic would have helped. You've got Dinobots and you've got a giant ship. You can put Dinobots on a ship. That's where you found them. Put them on the ship and take them with you. Leave the mini ones back in a locked car or something. It ain't that hard. I mean, and then the Knights, we got all barely anything of them. That we saw the Knights for a collective 20 minutes, and it was just either them trying to protect the talisman or them beating up on Optimus. And it's like, okay, but even if they are Dragonstorm, we're getting 0 impact from them. That the Knights are almost nowhere to be seen in this movie. The Knights are absolute ghosts in this, basically. That for a movie called The Last Knights is focusing more on the human element than even the Transformer element. That we're getting more human stuff than Transformer. Why? You did this in Age of Extinction and it didn't help. You did this in Dark of the Moon and it didn't help. Dark of the Moon had too much human interaction, in my opinion. Human focus, in my opinion. That there's too much human interaction in the movies lately. There's too much human, not enough Transformer. That most of the scenes involve the Transformers having no contact with each other, and the humans actually continuing the entire dialogue of another race by themselves. Like, it's another race. Let them explain it. You have giant robots fighting their own war. Let them at least have a part in what's going on. I gotta stop. I'm overheating right now. Alright, but then I'm gonna go back into some of my other topics. So, another topic that I want to go back into is the believableness of the film. That back when Quintessa tried to reunite Unicron or Cybertron or whatever, when she tried to pull Cybertron back together by draining the life from Unicron, okay, no. How is that gonna kill? You're bringing Cybertron back together. You could have done that with gravity. You could have just stuck some sort of gravity thing in the middle of Cybertron and just been like, come back here. No, you just wanted to kill Unicron and Earth. And I don't get how draining the life out of Unicron would have done anything. From what it looked like, Quintessa was just trying to reanimate Unicron. That she wasn't killing him, she was bringing him back to life. Because that was a whole bunch of energy being surged into Unicron. That it wasn't coming out of Unicron, it was going in. That it seemed like she was kind of draining Cybertron. And just bringing it back together as a dead husk. Because if you have to think about it, something had to have been keeping Cybertron spread out like that. Something had to have been keeping it floating and flying. So someone, somewhere was giving it power. Something had to have been doing that, so where's the power now? Oh, I have an idea. It's going into the freaking thing you're trying to kill! Like, what? And then, again, I'm going back to the characters. They did almost 0 justice to a lot of the characters. That a lot of the characters were in there for all of 7 seconds, and then just like, okay, no more, no more. You're gone until the end of the film. Like, they did that with Crosshairs and Drift. That Crosshairs, Drift, and Hound were basically gone for a large percentage of the film. That 3/4 of the film, they were gone, and we're like, okay, Michael Bay, you have Transformers. You have Transformers that you can use in this story. Yet you choose to make it 15 million humans. And then, again, going back to the believability, the part where they're driving the submarine, no one's driving it and there's no autopilot. And we clearly see that it's not a Transformer, because there's no surge of life or anything. There's no power button. There's no autopilot or anything on it. So there's no way that that submarine could have been a Transformer or piloting itself. Someone had to have been driving. And then, that was another thing I had. Nah, I forget what else I was going to say. There's something else I was going to say, but I forget it. I don't know. But giving this movie my rating, I would give it, honestly, a 1 out of 5. Again, I'm sorry, but like I said, beautiful garbage is the best caption I can give for this movie. That I still love the Transformers movies. I still like this one. But again, it was beautiful garbage. I'm sorry. You gotta stop. You have to go back to how you wrote number 1. Look at those notes, go back over it, look at what you did, look up how you did it, and then redo it. Because I know it seems like Michael Bay is trying to do more with the actual filming and the humor than he is to actually make the film good. And again, if you go back to Transformers 1, the filming in that was actually really good. And the humor in that had really amazing points for humor. That the Transformers 1 probably had a lot of the best humor points out of the series. That it's like, okay, but you do that in Transformers 1, and then you try and make this a joke. That's not humor. That's just not. Go back and look over your notes. Do what you did before. Not what you're doing now. No. Just not this. No, I'm sorry. No. But anyway, I'm going to leave this video, well, this review, here. I will probably leave a link down in the description. Well, I don't know why, because I would be leaving it to a trailer, and you guys have seen all the trailers from my other videos, except for the clips, but But I'm going to leave this video here. Again, I did go see this last night, so my information might be a little bit It might be a little bit off. It might be a little bit off. I don't know. But anyway, I'm leaving this video here. If you guys liked it, you can slap the like button as always, and I will see you guys later.